Hey, back to Thursday, January 10th, making fun of advanced kids who have issues. Not like those regular kids who are issue-free. Oh, just got a straight face. And so we're going to finish out or get closer into our Fable notes from here. This is the last day for Screwy Schedule. Tomorrow we get to go back to having full-length class periods, which also means we get to go back to our reading our novel with you guys. And
We finished our novel.
no, we did not, but a good try. Saying it does not make it true. And then we also have Best tomorrow. We have a Fable quiz coming up on Monday. And if you have this thing and you would like this thing back, I will have these through tomorrow over here. If not, then I will send them to the Great Recycling Bin in the Sky. If you did not pick up your other notebook, or not your other book report, it is now in the Recycling Bin in the Sky. And then I will be recycling those this weekend. Now is the part where your notebook is closed, probably with the writing utensil inside of there. And we're going to see how well this information has stayed in your noggin. We'll do the quick, speedy... Believe me, that was absent yesterday? I didn't think so. We're good to go. If anyone was absent, you get to write the stuff down. The rest of you, then the knowledge should be in your head. We're going to find out as we get into it from there. Listen, we had 3 types... Gaio, thank you for volunteering to start. That's very brave of you. We have the 3 types of fables that we got into. Gaio, which is the one that's been around for thousands of years and the longest amount of time. See, I had faith in you, Gaio. Good job. Traditional, which uses the old-timey stuff. And then we got to the verse fable, Lacey, which is written differently. With this one, written as the poem. You cheated by being smart. Stop being smart. This is school. The verse written was written out as a poem. And then we introduced the modern fable, Naomi, which has the modern...
Today's stuff. Modern. Oh,
Today's
wow.
stuffy.
Naomi, you sound so different after school. It's so strange. When you steal Naomi's answer, I then have to keep picking on her over and over again, and that's going to make someone sad. Naomi, how's a modern fable told?
Good.
There's a scientific word that we use to describe it. If it helps, everyone kept yelling at you a moment ago. Naomi, we'll come back to you in a moment. Apparently, it might have been good that they were all picking on you. It's fine. Hayden!
Today stuff.
Nice when it uses all the today stuff. Whew.
Actually,
Then, Naomi! Thanks for volunteering to go again. I'm so proud of you. With all of our fables, they were created to prevent kids from being stupid and hitting each other with heads, rocks, and stuff like that. In order to help them not become stupid, there's one thing every fable has to have at the end, which is the thing that makes them smarter. And what is that thing every fable has? See, I had faith in you guys. It's going to be the moral. Now, Isaiah, we have to figure out what the moral is. So, Isaiah, what is a moral? What's the definition of one so we know what to look for? It is the lesson learned. And it can be anything from, do not be on technology while the teacher is talking, so he'll take it from you and break it over his knee, to you should not be yelling out answers while he's talking because he'll have to charge you B points, to you should never set your shoelaces on fire while running through a fireworks company. There's any number of things that you may need to learn that make you a better person. There are 5 things that every fable has to have to qualify as a fable. Walden, the first one that we're going to have into it. The thing that every fable has to have that prevents the kids from being dumb that we just talked about a moment ago is... Starts with an M. Nicely done, Seth. They have to have a moral. Without the moral, it does not qualify as a fable. And then Campbell, the second thing we had to have on there in order to get kids to pay attention to our fable the whole way to the end was a character that they would enjoy. And what type of character do we discover should be in most fables?
Animals.
Nice one. Animals. They are fluffy and they're edible and they're delicious. And then we got to our third one. Christy, the third most important thing in fables, we want kids to pay attention to our fable all the way to the end. How long should our fable be? I would also accept short would work for me, which typically be 2 to 5 paragraphs. Sometimes even just 1 if you want to go really short. So be brief or short in one form or another from there. Liam, we then went to number 4. And number 4 was the overall tone of our fables, because you don't want to make the kids crying at the end like that. We're going to try and entertain them and keep them interested. So what should the overall tone of our fable be? Works for me. Uplifting, humorous, funny, enjoyable in one form or another. Reeves, the last one we have is what age that we're going to aim our fables at, because to figure out to keep people from being stupid throughout all the time. What age?
Until what, all ages?
You're never too old to be a moron. Which is why for some of you, you're like the hashtag life goal. You're like, I always wanted to be an adult and be stupid. Some of you are already on your way to achieving that. Lauren?
Can I go to the bathroom?
Sure, points.
Hey.
Oh, that's what, bring it on over. And then, let's see, we'll jump to, we're not done harassing you yet. Hang on. Harass numbers to there. Whee! Okay. Then we got to our person that made Fables all kind of famousy. Tyler, who was our person who made Fables famous. We only had one name like Rihanna or Bob. What was that?
It was like
Aesop?
It was like Aesop. So much like Aesop, it was Aesop. Let's see, from there, Louise. Now, you do not have to be exact or real close on this. I'll take like a rough estimate. Roughly, when did Aesop live?
Something BCE.
I also would accept a long time ago.
600.
You guys are frightening me.
You looking?
She cheated.
I know. She's a horrible person. No one likes her.
I remember.
Jackie always cheats.
Do not listen to the haters.
She cheated in
Um,
math, too.
Wow, they are really throwing all kinds of tacky now. It's like fourth period all over. I would also accept a long time ago. And then, ooh, let's go to our next one we can do from that S run. Let's go with Aesop was slave napped from one continent and then dragged to another country. What continent did he start at before he was slave napped and then dragged somewhere else? Your hint? It was humongous. Egypt is there. There's a giant desert called the Sahara. Nicely done. So he started off in Africa. And then from there, he was drugged to another country, Taunty, where he then had to spend the rest of his life. What country does he spend most of his life? Nice. So he was slave napped from Africa and then dragged to Greece and spent most of his time there. Let's see. Rosabella, he then became really good at this storytelling thing and managed to work his way up from like telling stories to kids to telling stories to adults to telling stories all the way up to the top person in all of Greece. Who was that person he managed to start telling stories to? Nicely done. Eventually managed to start telling stories to the emperor. Hang on 1 second.
How much?
3. And then see, so from there he was so... Tommy, he was so good at telling all of these stories to the emperor, he was finally able to get the one thing that all slaves wanted to get. And that was? That's you, Tommy.
Oh,
What is the one thing he was able to finally get after telling all of these stories that every slave wanted to get?
freedom.
Nice little, or a car, because a car is like freedom on wheels. He was eventually freed from there. Let's see.
I think that's where we stopped.
Roughly, we got a little bit farther than that. And so we got the freedom part. Oh, Gabby, with all of these stories that he told and became famous for and that made Fat Bank and stuff like that, he had a good memory and he was great at telling stories, but he didn't create most of them. Where did he get these stories that he's famous for?
From the people in Africa?
I would just accept from other people even. The fact that he just stole them from other people, and they came from India, the Far East, Africa, and stuff like that. There's actually a term for it when you steal other people's stuff.
Plagiarism.
Nice, that's what the whole plagiarism thing comes in. And then I believe with you guys, we got into the story about Delphi
Yeah.
with the gold.
So we got like
So, let's see, we have Delphi. How many pieces of gold was each person supposed to get? 3.
trace.
Settle down, Yelly. And then from there, did we get to a group complaining?
Yeah, like all of them. 3.
3.
The farmers, the women, the soldiers.
The farmers and the women. And the farmer. Women, soldiers.
Women. Soldiers. So then we got to the soldiers complaining, and we got to the women complaining, and we got to the farmers complaining, but we did not. Did we get past that to get to our solution?
No.
All right. So that's where we stopped. All right. So now we get to tag back in from this point. All right.
Yay.
So now we have the fact that Aesop has all 3 groups yelling and they're like, you have to decide who gets more money. We each get a better thing. So Aesop goes, all right, whoa. Time out. They're like, what? He goes, can we all just agree that you all did something different, but it was really impressive, and because you each did a really great different thing, you each are going to get the 3 pieces of gold. And they go, no, who gets more? You have to decide. Make a choice. And he's like, all right, fine. I have an idea. He's like, I have a solution. And they go, yay, solution. He goes, watch this. He gets out his little cane. He goes, follow me. And and he picks up the bag of gold. And they follow him out. He's like, and he walks out of town, and the whole village turns and follows him outside of town. And he goes down this big path that's out there, and they follow him until he gets to this lake that's outside of Delphi. And he goes up to this little rowboat he sees out there. And he waddles up this little rowboat. He's like, and then drops the big bag of gold down. He goes, all right, you wanted to see a solution for all this, right? And they go, yeah. He goes, here's the best solution I can come up with. And they go, okay. And he sits in the little rowboat and starts paddling. He's like, paddle, 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 paddle. And paddles himself so he gets out into the, maybe not the middle of the lake, but pretty far out. But he strides, he stands, he's like, ah. He's like, all right, you all did an incredible thing and helped the emperor win this war by sending warriors out there who were the best and strongest, fiercest fighters we'd ever seen. And the warriors were like, yay, go us! But the warriors were only able to do that because the women stayed back home and took care of everybody. So without them, none of this would have happened. And the women were like, yay, go us! He's like, but you all would have died if the farmers had not given up their food for you. And the farmers were like, yeah, go us! He goes, so you all did a different thing. But now you're fighting. And fighting against each other solves nothing. So here's the best solution I can think of. He bends down and he picks up the bag of gold. And he goes, do you see the bag of gold? And they go, yay, bag of gold. He goes, do you see the lake? They go, yeah, no! And he goes, bloop. He goes, bloop. They go, no. They start yelling. He goes, no, solution. They go, oh, okay. And he sits back down and starts paddling. And paddles back out, gets up, and walks to the people, and he goes, you all did something amazing, but you did it together. And when you started fighting, you were no longer together. The only way we can really do great things is by working together. Do you now understand that by working together, you solve all of this stuff? And the people looked at you and they went, yes, working together. That's what we have to do. And they did, to kill him. And that's where Aesop died. The Delphians rallied together as an entire village, and they killed him on the spot and ripped him apart. And they celebrated.
That's not good.
And that's how Aesop died. So now is where you get to open up the notebooks again, and you get to write in about the death of Aesop getting torn to pieces by the Delphians.
Little brats.
Don't be sad. Aesop died doing what every teacher loves. How every teacher wants to go out. It's every teacher's dream to be torn to pieces by angry students.
Please.
Hashtag teacher dream. That's why I'm always afraid of the student revolution.
What?
How does she know?
That was our plan for Monday. Compromised.
That's why I don't have to worry about you guys working together. You guys fighting each other all the time. So now, with our problem with poor Aesop, Aesop is dead and in a bunch of pieces. And he never wrote down any of these fables because he was illiterate. It was the drawback to growing up a slave and then coming from Africa to Greece. He never had to bother to learn the language. He just memorized them and retold the stories. But now that he's dead and he never wrote down any of these stories, how do we still have these stories today?
From people who remember.
Journalists.
People who wrote, people who didn't write them down, but they remembered them and retold them to other people. There's a term for that called oral tradition.
Retelling. Ouch.
Oral, meaning stories. Tradition, meaning to pass it down. Oral tradition is the passing down of a story from generation to generation. It's when you have a story that's not written down, but you just tell it from one person to the next. That's oral tradition. You probably have examples of oral tradition in your own family that you don't even realize. Probably happened over winter break and the holidays. If you went to go visit like grandparents, and when you go to visit grandparents, sometimes they'll tell stories like, oh, welcome to my house. Did I ever tell you the story about when your mom was a little girl and she got kicked out of class? You're like, no, you did not. Your mom was like, do not tell that story to them. And your mom was like, oh, well, sit down. This is a classic one. And your mom was like, oh, I'm leaving the room. And she walks out and you're like, oh, bring it on. Spill that tea. Well, that's the idea of oral tradition, where they are passing down this story to you. Someday, you're going to tell that story to your kids. When your grandma gets all sad, she's like, oh, Would you like to hear the story about when your grandma was a child and she got kicked out of class? And your grandma was like, do not tell them that story. And you're like, come on, kids, it's time. And you're going to pass along that same story. That's oral tradition, where you just pass down the story from inside the same family. But there's a problem with oral tradition. Something happens to our stories as they get passed down.
They get told differently.
There you go. They get told differently and change. Although technically it's not really a problem. It just gives us other versions of the same story. It's why we can have the tortoise and the hare and have 100 different variations of it, because each person who tells it slightly differently. There's just changes that happen. Speaking of changes, I have some bad news and a little bit of good news for you. This is not the last page.
No.
We have one more page we're getting ready to go to. That's the bad news. So some of you are going to have to go to your next left-hand page. The good news is it's not quite as much as this. It's a little bit less that we're going to have to get into. It's longer down this way, but not as much writing. It's more examples we're going to do. But you're going to need these examples to finish out. So just turn to the next page if you have to. If you have room on there, you can do it from there. Here is where our problem with Fables is going to come in. It's not with the oral tradition. It's with how long they are going to be. Nielsen, how long are Fables supposed to be?
Short.
Short. Because Fables are so short, we don't have time for that boring beginning. You remember what boring beginning stuff is?
Exposition.
Hard. Nicely done. Exposition. We don't have time for the boring beginning stuff when it comes time to Fables. Fables jump straight into the rising action because it's so short. You go right into rising action climax. But we still have to understand characters. So we're going to have these things that are going to be called a motif. M-O-T-I-F. Motifs are important in Fables to help us understand the characters. A motif is not what hillbillies ask their dentist for. That's completely different. Motif. Anyway, so a motif is going to be when you have a character that is the same in multiple stories. A common character pops up in multiple stories. Does that mean like Harry Potter? He's in like 12 movies. No, not like Harry Potter in 12 movies. A motif is even easier than that. It's when you're going to have a certain type of character where as soon as you see them, you automatically know what they are. Fairy tales often use a motif, which is a great example to help you out here. If you can think of a fairy tale, let's say that we're going to read a brand new one you've never heard of. And in this fairy tale, a stepmother comes in. Without even telling you, you know what kind of character she's going to be. Because what kind of character is every stepmother in every fairy tale?
Mean.
They're always mean and evil. It's just how they're made. That's a motif. I don't have to tell you anything. It's like, in comes the stepmother. She's mean. I'm like, she just walked in. Yeah, she probably like stabbed a baby or something. Because you just know stepmothers hate children in fairy tales. It's just how they're made. They sign a contract or something like that. That's a motif. Just like in a fairy tale, as soon as the prince comes in, what kind of character is the prince?
Charming.
There you go. He's going to be good-looking, charming, the main guy. We all are going to love him because that's now. In real life, that might not be true. But as far as fairy tales, same character every time. That's going to work for here for Fables. In a fable, as soon as you see an owl show up in our fable, you know what kind of character it is already.
Wise.
They always play smart, wise, nerdy, same thing. Yes. Now, this is the last bit of notes we're doing. You're just going to be writing down these examples as we go through. An owl is always going to be the smart character. We're never going to have a fable that's called The Owl and the Bear. One day, the owl got mad at the bear and pulled out his switchblade and shanked him and said, bleed! That's not going to happen because the owl doesn't play that type of character. The owl's going to be the one that's like, oh no, you're bleeding. Let's do CPR and wrap a bandage around you. And so that's how the owl's going to work. If we want to put a mean, bully, or tough guy character into our fable, you say a bunny? What kind of rabbits you're hanging out with? Wolf oftentimes will play that character. Not every time, but oftentimes the wolf does. There's another type of big creature that will sometimes play that role too. Tiger would. The only problem with tigers is they weren't very common in these areas. They didn't actually see them.
Bears.
Bears, big one that'll pop up. So you have wolves, bears, and then, oddly enough, the one that you're not thinking of, the word bully comes from an animal. There you go. The word bully comes from the word bull, because if you get near a bull, it charges you and pushes you around. If you get near a bully, they charge you and push you around. That's why they called them bullies, because they were like a bull. Now, the one at the end, cat, we're actually going to see it in multiple categories. The cat is one of the few animals that can play many different roles. It just depends on what kind of fable it is. If our fable is called The Cat and the Mice, the cat's probably going to be mean. But if we're going to tell you, this is the fable of the cat and the elephant, well, the cat's probably not going to be a bully, because the cat's like, smack, smack, squash. It's not going to be. So in that case, it doesn't work. So the cat will pop up in different ways. Along those same lines, if we're going to have a sneaky thief or tricky character, not a mouse, but a good guess.
A cat.
Sometimes could be, but there's one that works better.
Panther.
Creative.
A bird. A bird.
Think. One already has a built-in mask. The raccoon often works it. Another common one will be, you can think of,
A bird.
if you're a small Hispanic girl who has a backpack. Swiper.
I said that.
What kind of animal is Swiper? A fox.
I said that.
And then there's also
I still said
weasel will
bird.
pop up quite a bit too, because they were real. A weasel's like a snake with fur and little legs, like the ferret. They pop up on a lot of these too. What's up, 8th graders?
We have a question for your book.
Yes.
We need the roster today.
Right. You still haven't emailed me.
Yeah, we just. Yeah.
Just now?
Yeah.
Well, then I will.
Not just now. 10 minutes ago.
All right. Yeah. When I get done, I can do that. Take care of it. You have to wait. I can't do it at this moment. At the moment I'm doing this teaching thing.
Okay, thank
All right.
you.
Next time, don't wait till the last second.
Sorry.
Hashtag learning. 8th graders. Along those lines. At least it's on video. If we wanted to have a character that was going to have a really instead of being smart like the owl, but have a good memory and not forget things.
A mouse.
No.
Elephant.
You really like mice, though.
Oh, a chimpanzee.
She sounds
It's the elephant is the one that pops up quite a bit. Now, the elephant doesn't actually have a good memory, but it's oftentimes connected with that as far as the whole motif thing goes.
I think a fish should go right here.
Did you say a fish? That kind of scares me how you guys think of
A
animals.
gnat. A gnat. The gnat and the elephant.
As soon as you see the fact that a rabbit... Tomorrow we'll finish out the rest of these. No, this time the answer is mouse.
Go for